Most stories about millionaires begin with shiny cars, polished glass towers, and the kind of confidence that never breaks. But this one starts in the dirt, in a grim alleyway, with a man who looked like the world had already forgotten him, and a woman whose perfect life was quietly collapsing. Later, much later, people would say the moment everything changed was when a homeless man wired $20,000 to save a millionaire woman from the man who betrayed her. They would say fate stitched their lives together in a way no one could have predicted. But that's not where the story began. It began days earlier, under a pale morning sky, before anyone knew who he really was. Alejandra had always been proud of solving things on her own. She was the kind of woman who walked fast, talked confidently, and lived in a world where asking for help sounded like failure. But that morning, as she stepped out of the cafe holding a paper cup that was no longer warm, she felt small in a way she hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was because her life was falling apart piece by piece. Her relationship, her business partnership, the future she thought she was building. Or maybe it was the loneliness she didn't want to name. Either way, she wasn't really looking at where she was going when she almost tripped over someone crouched near the bus stop. He wasn't begging. He wasn't even speaking. He just sat there quietly with a dignity that didn't match his torn jacket or worn-out boots. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. He nodded, barely looking up. "It's fine, miss." There was something in his voice, steady, respectful, not the tone of a man defeated. The tone of a man enduring. She hesitated. Something pulled at her. What was it? Pity? No, not pity. Recognition. She'd seen that same heaviness in her own mirror lately. "You look like you're having a rough day," she said softly. He looked up then, and his eyes, the tired, calm kind, met hers. "I'm not asking for charity," he said. "I don't need anyone feeling sorry for me." "It isn't charity," she answered gently. "It's just help, from one person having a hard time to another." For a second, he studied her like he was trying to determine if she meant it. Most people walked past him like he was invisible, but she didn't, and that mattered. Finally, he nodded. "All right," he murmured. "Thank you." She reached into her bag and handed him a small envelope, a contact card, and a bit of cash. Not enough to offend him, just enough to show sincerity. "I know someone who's looking for a worker," she told him. "Construction job, good people. They just need someone dependable." He blinked, surprised. "You're helping me get a job?" "If you want it." A long silence. Then, "I do." And something unexplainable flickered between them, something fragile, like hope. The next day she saw him again, but this time he wasn't sitting on the ground. He was standing in line at the job site, waiting with the others. He arrived last, but when the contractor called out the name of the next hire, it was his. He looked up at Alejandra with the smallest, most grateful smile she had ever seen. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew that moment felt important. When she approached him with a work vest, he accepted it with quiet politeness. "I didn't know you were looking for a job," she said lightly, trying to make conversation. He gave a faint, sad smile. "Did you think I was a vagrant?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't want to offend him. "I didn't mean it that way," she whispered. "I know," he replied, "and I'm not offended. I may look like this now, but it wasn't always the case." There was a story behind those words. She could hear it, a long one, a painful one. And before she could ask more, he suddenly reached into his pocket and dropped something into the nearby trash bin, a metallic clink. She frowned and stepped closer. Inside the trash, she saw a ring. Gold. Real gold. "Why would you throw this away?" she asked, startled. He didn't even turn around. What value is gold when the love behind it was a lie? Something in her chest tightened. Before she could respond, he walked away, not rudely, just quietly, like a man who'd carried too much for too long. She stood there frozen, her fingers brushing the rim of the trash bin. What kind of heartbreak makes a man throw away gold? What had happened to him? Why did she suddenly want to know so badly? When she returned to the spot hours later, wanting answers, he was gone. Completely gone. A ghost in daylight. She searched the nearby stores showing his picture, asking anyone she could find. Have you seen this man? He was just here. He left on a bus. Something inside her pressed forward. Curiosity, yes, but also something warmer. Something she wasn't ready to name. At last, someone said, he went to a job site, somewhere around November 10th Street. It wasn't much, but for reasons she couldn't explain, it was enough. Alejandra turned toward the road, determination hardening her steps. She was going to find him, and she had no idea. He would soon change her life forever. The construction site was louder than she expected. Metal clanging, workers shouting orders, engines rumbling like restless beasts. Alejandra stepped into the chaos, searching for the man whose disappearance had stirred something unfamiliar in her. She didn't know exactly what she was hoping to find. A thank you? A conversation? Or just reassurance that he hadn't slipped back into the shadows of the city? But instead, she walked straight into the middle of a storm. Please, Alejandra, just listen to me. Her blood ran cold. Paul. Of all the voices she never wanted to hear again, his was at the top of the list. He stood near the unfinished wall, disheveled and desperate. Like a man who finally realized he wasn't as irreplaceable as he'd always believed. Don't do this, he begged, stepping toward her. It was one mistake. One. You're really ending everything over that? She folded her arms tightly across her chest to keep from shaking. One mistake? The betrayal had ripped apart years of trust. He said it like it was a spilled glass of water, not a shattered life. I can't trust you anymore, she said, and I'm not going to try. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. Then, as if fate wanted to add gasoline to the fire, Jose walked past them carrying a stack of tools. He was focused, quiet, doing nothing wrong. But the universe has a cruel way of letting jealous men reveal who they really are. Paul spun around. Jose bumped his shoulder slightly, an accident anyone could forgive. But Paul exploded. What do you use those eyes for? Sleeping? He snapped, shoving him backward. Jose froze, stunned but not aggressive. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't see... Of course you didn't, Paul barked. Where did you find this clown, Alejandra? Every muscle in her body tensed. It was an accident, she shot back. Stop talking to him like that. But Paul didn't stop. Men like him rarely stopped when they felt their egos slipping. You're fired, Paul spat, pointing at Jose like he was flicking away dirt. No, Alejandra said instantly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, enough to make the nearby workers pause. You don't get to fire anyone, Paul scoffed. In case you've forgotten, this is our project. And I already told you, Alejandra said. I'll give you your half, and then I'm done. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You don't have that money. I'll get it. Paul smirked, enjoying every second of her struggle. You have until tomorrow. Otherwise, I take everything. The project, the land, the contracts, everything. Her heart sank. Tomorrow. That wasn't a deadline, it was a threat. For a brief moment, the world blurred around her. The noise of the site faded into a dull hum. She felt her throat tighten, her breathing quicken. And Paul saw it. He knew exactly where her weak spots were and pushed them ruthlessly. Unbelievable, he muttered. One moment of anger and you're ready to throw your whole life away. She turned and walked away before he could see the tears forming. Jose watched her silently, his jaw clenched, not with fear but with something close to protectiveness. When she stepped behind one of the temporary walls, he followed with quiet footsteps. Are you okay? He asked gently. She tried to answer, but the words tangled inside her chest. Her vision blurred. She dropped her gaze to the dusty floor, ashamed of her own emotions. If you want to cry, he said softly, you can. No one here will judge you. That was it. the sentence that unlocked everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not because of Paul, not entirely, but because she had spent so long being strong, pretending she had everything under control, pretending that betrayal didn't scar her. Now, standing in front of a man she barely knew, she collapsed emotionally in a way she hadn't allowed herself to in years. "It's not that I still love him," she whispered shakily. I wasted so much time, so much of my life." "And for what?" Jose nodded slowly, his eyes full of quiet understanding. "Sometimes," he said, "the best thing that can happen is that someone shows you their true colors." She let out a broken laugh. "I'm sorry for this whole scene," she said, wiping her face. "You shouldn't have had to hear any of it." "Don't apologize," he replied. "Life hurts sometimes, but you'll heal." There was something about his voice, steady, grounded, that made her believe him more than she believed her own thoughts. She took a long breath, letting the weight on her chest settle. Then an unexpected realization washed over her. This man, the one thrown away by society, the one she had mistaken for someone lost, was comforting her better than the man she'd built a life with, and that truth struck her deeper than anything Paul could have shouted. If Alejandra thought the day had reached its emotional limit, she was wrong. Life had one more twist waiting for her, wrapped in sharp perfume and colder intentions. She was walking toward the supply shed with a clipboard in her hand when she heard someone call out sharply, "Jose Daniel!" The tone wasn't warm. It wasn't curious. It was the sound of a blade disguised as a voice. Alejandra turned, confused, and saw a woman approaching Jose with confident, entitled steps. Her hair was perfectly styled, her jewelry shimmering even under the dull light of the unfinished building. Everything about her said expensive, except her eyes. Those carried bitterness. "Whoa," Alejandra murmured under her breath. "Who is she?" Jose stiffened immediately, the way someone freezes when an old wound is touched unexpectedly. "What are you doing here?" "Francis?" he asked quietly. The woman raised one eyebrow as if the answer should be obvious. "I'm here for what's mine. Did you think you could avoid me forever?" She shoved a folder into his hands. Divorce papers. Alejandra stood back, hidden half behind a column, unwilling to interrupt but unable to look away. Francis crossed her arms tightly. "You said you'd sign these, and you're going to. Today." Jose flipped through the papers calmly, though his hands trembled slightly. "You want the house?" he asked. "I want what I deserve," she replied, each word dipped in ice. 2 years, Jose. 2 years of watching you fall apart. I wasted my youth on a man who used to be somebody." Alejandra's stomach twisted. Cruel didn't even begin to describe this woman. Jose swallowed hard. "Everyone has ups and downs," he said softly. "I did what I could." "Ups and downs?" she scoffed. "You went from running a company to patching walls and cleaning floors like some nobody." She looked him up and down the way someone examines a stain. "Just imagine my children having a father like that." Alejandra covered her mouth, horrified. But Jose, he didn't snap. He didn't yell. He just looked, heartbroken, but steady. "I may be working construction right now," he replied, "but I would teach them things that matter: hard work, love, integrity." Frances rolled her eyes. "No woman should waste her time with you. Not anymore." Then she noticed Alejandra watching from a distance. Her expression sharpened with jealousy and calculation. "And you," she sneered, walking closer to Alejandra, "what are you, the new replacement? Did he promise you something?" "Because he used to promise me the world, too." Alejandra didn't move, didn't blink. "He didn't promise me anything," she said quietly, "but I believe in him." The shock on Frances' face lasted only a moment before turning into anger. "I want those papers signed," she demanded again, shoving them toward Jose. "Tomorrow, without a fight." Jose inhaled slowly. Fine, he said. Tomorrow. Francis smirked triumphantly. I hope you're not planning anything smart. And for the record, I'm keeping the house. Don't even try to stop me. She turned sharply and strutted away, heels clacking like insults on the concrete floor. When she finally disappeared from sight, Alejandra rushed toward Jose. You didn't have to lie just to defend me, he said quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. She's intense. Alejandra laughed sadly. Intense? She talked to you like you were less than human. He shrugged with a kind of quiet acceptance that broke her heart even more. That's how it's been for a while now. She hesitated. Can I ask something? What happened between you two? Jose let out a slow breath, as though releasing a memory he never wanted to hold. When my business started failing, he began, everything changed. She changed. It's like she loved the money, not me. Alejandra's eyes softened. And then? I tried to invest what I had left, a long shot, a big risk. I was waiting for it to pay off, but she didn't want to wait. She wanted comfort, luxury, guarantees. So she left. He nodded. Took the house, took the little stability I still had. He paused before adding quietly, and she told me no woman should ever waste time with a man like me. Alejandra felt something ignite inside her. Anger, empathy, and something else she wasn't ready to name. That's not true, she said firmly. If you built a future once, you can build one again. He met her eyes, surprised by the conviction in her voice. Do you really believe that? He asked. She nodded. I see it in your eyes. And suddenly, Jose looked different. Still worn, still quiet, but no longer defeated. Something inside him stood taller, breathed deeper. For the first time in a long time. He looked like a man who believed he might rise again. The next morning didn't feel like any ordinary morning. Not for Alejandra, and certainly not for the man who had spent the last few years drifting through life like a ghost. This time, when Jose walked onto the construction lot, he wasn't carrying tools. He was carrying a flower. Just one, simple, unexpectedly beautiful. Alejandra froze when she saw him approaching, the soft bloom held gently between his rough, calloused fingers. For you, he said almost shyly, a flower. For another flower. Her breath caught in her throat. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Soft, sincere, without expecting anything in return. It made the ground beneath her feet feel uncertain, but in a way that warmed her chest instead of scaring her. She took the flower carefully, as if afraid she might break the moment by holding it too tightly. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. I wanted to, he replied. To remind you how valuable you are, even on days when life tries to convince you otherwise. Something fluttered deep inside her. For a few moments, the noise of the construction site, the drills, the chatter, the metal clattering, faded into the background. All she noticed was the soft curve of his smile and the gentleness in his eyes. How could someone who had lived through so much hardship still look at the world with such kindness? Maybe that was exactly what drew her in. Later that afternoon, she found him sitting on a low concrete block, eating a small meal he had packed in a worn container. She approached him with a bag of food in her hands. Warm food, good food. She wasn't sure why she felt nervous. She sat beside him. I thought you might be hungry, she said. Jose blinked, surprised. You didn't have to bring me food, she laughed softly, and you didn't have to bring me a flower, so I guess we're even. He smiled, the kind of smile that made ordinary moments feel meaningful. A comfortable silence settled between them, unexpected but not awkward, the kind of silence shared by people who didn't need explanations. It feels strange, she admitted, looking at him. Yesterday I saw you in the park. Today you bring me flowers. And now I'm sitting here bringing you lunch. Jose looked down at his hands. Maybe destiny is choosing for us. He lifted his eyes again, the corners crinkling. And choosing well. Her heart skipped a beat. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He pulled it out, stared at the screen, and suddenly went pale. "Oh no. What is it?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "I forgot." "Completely." "Forgot what?" "My divorce appointment." She stared at him. "You forgot. Your divorce?" He pressed a hand to his forehead. "I know it sounds ridiculous. Today felt different. I didn't think about anything except being here." Her cheeks warmed again. She tried to hide it, but failed miserably. He stood up quickly. "I have to go. I'll be late." "Wait," she blurted out before she could think. "Can I come with you?" Jose froze. "You were serious about that?" "Yes." She nodded, steadying her voice. "Unless you'd rather go alone." He shook his head immediately. "No, I'd like you to come." Her chest filled with something she couldn't name. Something scary. Something undeniably real. "Then let's go," she said, grabbing her bag. The drive to the lawyer's office felt strangely intimate. Not romantic, at least not yet, but deeply personal. Two souls that had been cracked by life, sitting side by side, sharing quiet breaths and unspoken thoughts. At one point, he glanced at her hands resting in her lap. "Thank you for being here," he whispered. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," he insisted. "I've been walking alone for a long time." She smiled softly. "Then maybe it's time you stopped." He didn't answer, but the way his fingers brushed the steering wheel told her he heard every word. When they arrived, he turned to her before getting out of the truck. "Are you sure you'll be okay waiting out here?" he asked. "Of course. Go handle what you need to handle." He nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. Alejandra watched him disappear through the glass doors, feeling something shift inside her chest. She had come with him to support him, but now she wondered if fate was supporting both of them, because whatever this was, whatever was happening between them, it didn't feel accidental. It felt like the start of something neither of them had expected, but both of them quietly hoped for. The lawyer's office had none of the warmth of the construction site they had just left behind. No workers shouting over machines, no dust in the air, no accidental laughter carried by the wind. Here, everything felt stiff. Polished floors, sharp echoes, cold furniture. Even the silence felt rehearsed. Alejandra followed Jose inside but stayed near the hallway, giving him space. She watched him adjust the collar of his worn shirt, smoothing it as if he wanted to look a little less tired, a little more composed, not for his ex-wife, but for himself. The door to the conference room opened with a muted click, and there she was. Frances. Beautiful in an icy, intimidating way. The kind of beauty that didn't soften anything, only sharpened it. She offered no greeting, no acknowledgement of Alejandra. She simply slid a set of documents across the table toward Jose. "Sign where he marked the tabs," she said flatly. Jose sat across from her and opened the folder. The papers were thick, too thick for something as fragile as a marriage. He flipped through them slowly, reading each page as if he needed a moment to process that this was really happening. From where Alejandra stood, she could only see his shoulders rise and fall with each breath. Controlled, quiet, steady. "You're keeping the house?" he finally asked. Frances didn't blink. "It's the least I deserve." Her voice carried no anger, but it held something worse, certainty. The certainty of someone who believes taking is justified because they once gave. "And you get everything else," she continued, "your debts, your decisions, your mess." Jose didn't react. He simply turned another page. "Fine," he said. "You can have the house." Frances exhaled triumphantly, leaning back in her chair. "But I'm keeping Tech Nova," he added. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "That useless investment? Keep it. I don't care." Alejandra watched Jose's posture shift ever so slightly, as if a weight had lifted from him the moment she dismissed the only thing he truly wanted. They continued reviewing the documents, signing where the lawyer indicated. When the final signature was placed on the last page, the attorney straightened the stack, pressed his seal, and slid the papers toward them. "That's it," he said. "The divorce is finalized." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Jose exhaled, a deep, long breath that sounded like someone finally stepping out of a storm. He stood, thanked the lawyer, and walked out to where Alejandra waited. She expected to see sadness, maybe exhaustion, but instead the faintest smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "Better than I expected," he replied. They walked outside together. The sun felt warmer than before, as if greeting a man finally freed from something that had been draining him for years. Once they reached his truck, she turned to him. "I've never seen anyone look relieved after a divorce," she said gently. Jose leaned his back against the door, folding the documents under his arm. "It wasn't the marriage that broke me," he said. "It was trying to hold on to a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. Signing that paper wasn't losing something. It was letting go." His honesty caught her off guard. She nodded slowly, understanding far more than she expected to. "And Technova?" she asked. "You insisted on keeping it. Why?" He hesitated, but not out of fear, more like he was choosing the right moment to reveal something delicate. "It's important," he said carefully, "more important than she ever knew." Alejandra tilted her head, curious. "Important how?" He offered a small, almost playful smile. "That's part of the surprise." She blinked. "Surprise?" "I told you," he said, opening the truck door for her. "I've been waiting a long time to share something, but I want to say it in the right place." "Is it good news?" she asked. "The best I've had in years." Her heartbeat quickened, not romantically, not yet, but with anticipation. Something big was unfolding, and Jose seemed lighter, steadier, almost renewed. He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. "Where are we going now?" she asked. "I need to pick up some construction plans," he said. "Then I'll tell you everything." Alejandra settled into her seat, still clutching the flower he gave her earlier. Whatever this surprise was, it clearly mattered. To him. And now, strangely, to her, too. As the truck pulled out of the parking lot, she realized something quietly powerful. She had just witnessed the end of Jose's old life and had unknowingly stepped into the beginning of his new one. They had barely left the parking lot of the lawyer's office when the past, ugly, impatient, and entitled, came stomping straight toward them. Paul. He stood near the entrance of the construction site, arms stiff, expression twisted somewhere between anger and desperation. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment, watching for her car to return, rehearsing the words he wanted to throw like knives. "Alejandra," he called out sharply, "we need to talk." Her stomach dropped. Not fear, just exhaustion. Paul had a talent for turning even the simplest moments into chaos. Jose slowed beside her. "Do you want me here?" he whispered. She nodded without looking away from Paul. "Yes, stay." Paul didn't waste a second. "You were supposed to pay me today," he snapped, stepping closer. "I'm not waiting any longer." Alejandra held her ground. "I told you I needed a few more days." "There are no more days," Paul growled. "Either you pay me now, or you give up your share of the project. Your choice." His tone made it clear he wasn't offering choices. He was expecting surrender. "I'm not giving up anything," she said calmly. Paul scoffed. "Then maybe we can settle this another way." The pause that followed was thick and foul. "One night," he said quietly, leaning toward her. "Just one, and I'll give you more days." Jose took one step forward, not aggressive, not reckless, but protective in a way that made the air crackle. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Leave her alone." Paul turned on him like a cornered animal. "This doesn't concern you." "It does now," Jose replied. "How much does she owe you?" Paul blinked. "What?" "How much?" Jose repeated, voice steady. Paul's jaw tightened. $20,000, money she doesn't have. Without even flinching, Jose said, "Give me your bank account number." Paul laughed in his face. You? He gestured at Jose's work clothes, stained from endless labor. You're going to pay me $20,000? Please, don't waste my time. Jose didn't raise his voice. He didn't step closer. He just repeated calmly, "Give me the number." And somehow, the quietness of his tone carried more authority than shouting ever could. Paul hesitated, just long enough to betray his doubt. Then, muttering under his breath, he rattled off the account information. Jose typed it into his phone, hit a button, and slipped the device back into his pocket. 10 seconds later, Paul's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then froze. What? What is this? He stammered. Where did this money come from? Jose met his eyes with steady calm. It doesn't matter where. You have your payment. Leave her alone. Paul stepped back, face draining of color. No, he said, shaking his head. No, something's off. Alejandra, do you even know who this man is? People who can move money like this, they're dangerous. Alejandra crossed her arms. I know exactly who he is. Paul pointed at Jose, voice cracking. You didn't get this from honest work. Tell her the truth. Jose shifted his gaze to her. It's from my company, he said. Tech Nova. Paul blinked. That little startup you threw your money into? That thing is actually worth something? Alejandra spoke before Jose could answer. Check it, she told Paul. He tapped frantically on his phone, then stopped, then stared. Then whispered the only word his pride had left. No. Because there it was. Public information. Undeniable truth. Technova was now valued in the millions. Completely legal. Completely legitimate. Completely out of Paul's reach. Alejandra stepped forward, her voice unwavering. You have your money. Now leave. I never want to see you again. Paul looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, shrinking in size with every step until he disappeared into the chaos of the construction site. The moment he was gone, Alejandra spun toward Jose. Please tell me you didn't do something reckless. He let out a soft laugh. No, I took a risk a long time ago, and today it finally paid off. She breathed out slowly, a mix of relief and admiration. I'm surprised by your intelligence, she admitted. Jose rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly shy. Well, in that case, he murmured, maybe you'll let me repay you with a date? She blinked, caught off guard in the best possible way. A date could be free, she said softly. But yes, I'd love that. He smiled, gentle, hopeful, honest. Then maybe, he said, fate didn't just bring us together. Maybe it's giving us a second chance at life. They walked away side by side, no longer strangers linked by circumstance, but two people quietly aware that something new, something fragile and extraordinary, had begun.